Hello. In this episode, I thought I would talk about some of my favourite books. Now, I will try to keep the list as short as possible, with still bringing you books that I think would be extremely valuable for most people to read. Of course, everyone is at different stages of their journey, of their life, so certain books may not appeal to them right now, they may appeal to them in a few years. But you never know. From having found this video, this could be that signal from the universe that you are to read some of the material I'm about to suggest. So, two of the suggestions are actually a series of books, and I'll start with the first one of that. And it's actually Carlos Castaneda's work. Now, this is just one of his books, A Separate Reality. And I actually started reading these many years ago, maybe about 7 years ago or more, and they were some of the first books I read about spirituality and like working on the self. And I think it's really clever how Carlos has created this entire world, this entire universe, all centered around Don Juan and the teachings he received from Don Juan. Now, I don't actually believe it's true, but although he claims it to be true, but I don't actually think it matters. That's I think he did that as a way to trick people into believing that this could be possible, because I think actually a lot of what he talks about is actually possible, but he just probably didn't have the experiences in the way that he describes them. That's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong, but when I found that out, it didn't take away anything from the lessons that I actually learned from reading this book, or the series of books. I think I've read about 8 or 9 of them. He has a lot, and towards the later parts of his writing, they sort of tail off a bit in terms of how good the content is, in my opinion. But some of my favourites was The Art of Dreaming. The Art of Dreaming probably being my favourite, my personal favourite. Second to that, The Fire from Within. That was a really amazing book. I think it is best to start from the beginning, start from the teachings of Don Juan. That's the first book he wrote, and then sort of go from there, and just see what you think of this. It's an incredible story, and I really like how he mixes storytelling with knowledge. It's not just a deep philosophical book giving his opinions on the world. It's wrapped up in mystery and story and character development and humour, and I think it's a really good way of getting information out to people. Yeah, so totally check out his books if you feel that they may be of interest to you. They were very interesting for me and very fun to read. So the next author I would like to introduce to you guys, he's actually very well known, but not enough that from what he created, I believe. Like, this man created so many books, and you've probably seen at least one of the films that had come out of the books that he has written. He's dead now, but this is Philip K. Dick, and here is his exegesis, and it's an absolute monster of a book. This thing is about 900 pages long. I mean, just look how thick that is. You could do some damage if you hit someone with this book. But there's a lot of knowledge in this book, so much, and it gives a very interesting perspective on life, and like what Philip was actually going through in his mind and his life's journey. And so in his exegesis, he really unpacks the incredible experience that he claims to have had, where he had this huge download of information coming from some external source, which he said went on for hours and hours, and it was like a consistent flickering of images, and like watching a video of this huge download of information that completely changed his life from that point onwards. And he continued to have very intense dreams and messages and signs coming from what he thinks was the same source. And what a lot of the exegesis is him trying to figure out what exactly was the entity or energy that gave him this message, and why did he receive it, and why is nobody else able to receive it. And he really goes deep into exploring the mysteries of time and space and this world in general, and what's happening, with the whole times that we're in, with the coming or the what's happening right now with the whole divine intervention, you could say, with the long reign of the darkness that's been going on for humanity, that now is the time that the light is starting to shine once again. And he goes very deep into all of this sort of material, and it's very, very interesting. I must say, though, it wouldn't be, I guess, Philip Dick's exegesis if it didn't go on for a little bit and wasn't a little bit crazy at times, but it really does show you what kind of a man this guy really was. He was an amazing guy, and he wrote so many books, and he would apparently write all the way through the night sometimes, writing, and this is handwriting or writing on a typewriter, so can you imagine what this man would have accomplished if he had a computer? Yeah, so I would highly recommend his book, The Exegesis, and actually his other books. I've read a couple of his novels themselves. Do Androids Dream with Electric Sheep was good, and that's actually what inspired the film Blade Runner, if you've seen that. Ubik was really good. I really enjoyed that book, but specifically his exegesis for the pure raw content of just such fascinating material, and how he's was like a modern Gnostic in the fact that he had these revelations given to him, and yeah, it's very interesting material. I'd highly recommend check that out. So the next book that I would recommend is a bit more grounded. Here it is. So this is The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. Now, this has sort of become like a standard for people who are interested in biology and personal growth and the subconscious mind. I feel that this has now become like a standard for anyone who's interested in this sort of stuff. They just sort of, it's almost a necessity to read it. It's just that useful and that interesting, and the way Bruce explains quite a complex subject, but very simply, using his biological background, and he mixes science and spirituality very well, but also in a way that keeps it grounded, and that a scientist themselves could read that, someone who doesn't believe in spirituality but still understand the concepts that he's talking about. And a big part of what he writes about is how the mind can affect the body, and how thoughts can change the ways that cells will operate, and how proteins will be synthesized, and all of these different things. And he did experiments like with stem cells, where he would take the same stem cells, like he would multiply them, put them in 3 separate dishes, petri dishes, change the environment which the stem cells were living in, and they would change into different kinds of body material. I think one was fat, one was bone, and one was muscle, I believe. Don't quote me on that exactly, but it was 3 different materials of the body that the same stem cells turned into. And we have these stem cells in our body. So that's really interesting when you think about that, because that's quite empowering knowledge. And I believe that's what Bruce is going for nowadays, is empowering knowledge, because for a very long time he was teaching medical students at university a very disempowering approach to looking at the body and looking at health and illness. Basically saying that genes control life, and that you didn't get to choose your genes, so you're basically a victim of your hereditary, when actually that's totally false. Epigenetics, which is, he didn't coin that term, it's actually a branch of science in itself, which suggests that we actually have control over our genes to a very large extent. And unless you were born with a disease, you can change whatever disease you have by taking control over your life and doing things that obviously make you healthy and living a balanced lifestyle and all of it, everything that comes with being a healthy person. This can all be achieved, and this can actually determine whether or not you have a disease. And it actually reminds me of a story I was told when I was a child, and this was in an assembly at school. And I don't know if this is true. I haven't actually been able to find the proof of this on the internet, but it goes that there was a man who would work in a refrigeration company, and it's a Friday afternoon, he's had a long week, and everyone else has gone home, and he's doing the final bits of packing, and he actually gets locked in the fridge, in this, like his fridge van, and is unable to open it from the inside, and he knows nobody else is going to be coming back and everyone's gone until Monday, and it's pretty cold in fridges. So he thought that, well, that's it, I'm probably going to die. And sure enough, he starts going through the stages of being in cold, extreme cold, and sure enough, on Monday morning, they go and find the man trapped dead in the fridge. But what was interesting is that the fridge wasn't on. It was actually off. It was his entire mind that created the experience of being in cold and actually caused him to die. He believed it so much that he actually caused himself to experience hypothermia and go through the stages of hypothermia and die. Now, I don't know. That sounds like it could be true, but I can't claim that that is 100% truth. But it does, when you look at how powerful the mind is, then I believe that we could literally kill ourselves or heal ourselves with the power of our mind. And it's the placebo effect. Everybody's heard about the placebo effect. What's not so often talked about is the nocebo effect, which is the opposite, where you can make yourself sick just by believing it. And that's a very interesting perspective to take. And so Bruce talks a lot about that. The core of his work is that kind of material. And so that leads on very nicely to my next book, which I don't actually have in physical copy, but you can find it on a website called daohearts.com, and I'll put a link to that in the description. And it's a Qigong book. If you're familiar with my writings on my blog, you may have come across my article where I talk about clairvoyance, healing, and New Age fallacies, where I do reference this book. And it's a really, really good book. It's called Paranormal Abilities, The Techniques of Qigong Science, by a man called Dr. Pang Ming. And he is a Chinese man who studies extensively in Western medicine and Eastern medicine, and then decided he found a really good method of doing Qigong that he created for himself, taking the best parts of all of these different methodologies that he found and merging it into one practice. And it's a really awesome practice. I actually practice Zhunen Qigong every day, and I really am finding the benefits from it. But without going too much into my personal practice and Zhunen Qigong itself, just to talk about what the book talks about, it's very, very interesting, and it mentions a lot about how, again, the power of the mind, how the mind can create health or how the mind can create sickness, but also how we can use energy to heal ourselves, essentially, which is very, very interesting. And there's a whole section about how Qigong can also be used for other avenues of life, such as using it in agriculture, using it to send energy to crops to increase how quickly they will grow. And there was a bunch of scientific experiments carried out throughout China referencing exactly that, where they measured how quickly different crops would grow, how much they would yield, what quality the food was, and all of it was improved. All of these factors, not all of the same factors for each plant, but individual plants had different factors that were improved and enhanced. And it's very interesting. It could also be extended into the growing of animals and how they would grow faster when given this energy treatment, or how you could use it for improving the intelligence of children by creating chi fields around them and measuring their test scores, and so on. There's just so much depth to this book, and talks about psychic abilities and how he suggests that they are the next step in human evolution, and a persistent, dedicated Qigong practice can help develop these, but there's like a special way. You can't really be really attached and needy to trying to achieve these goals of psychic abilities. You just sort of have to calmly do your practice, and then maybe one day they will appear. So yeah, it's a really good book, and it's great to have some material from China, from what a Chinese man's perspective is on the world and what he has experienced. And I was very grateful to have come across this book, and very grateful to the translators who did a great job of getting the material in English. And so my next book is actually a series of books. Now, this these series are very esoteric, very deep, and if you want to jump into the deep end, and this is a good book to do it. And a series of books. This is The Law of One, and this is book 2. Actually, I did have book 1, but I lent it, and I'm yet to get it back. So hopefully one day I get it back. But they are great books. They claim to have channeled a entity called Ra, who gives them all of this amazing information, which I must say, even if it's not true, I believe it is, but even if it wasn't, the information that they have is extraordinary. It's just so powerful and really resonated with me on a really deep level when I was reading the words. It talks about the coming events that might happen in the future, talks about the past, talks a lot about the pyramids in Egypt, talks a lot about the chakras and the different kinds of energy that can go with the chakras and what that can entail. Talks a lot about being of service to others and how important that is, especially now as we're entering what they call a harvest, where we can go on to the next level of reality, which is a very interesting concept, and that would happen when you die. And say if you've qualified to graduate from this level of reality, then maybe you will make it to the next one, which is a whole higher subset of reality. And it's very, very interesting, and I would highly recommend, if anything I just said resonates with you, to go check it out. You can find the PDFs online, but so very, very interesting books. And the final book I would like to recommend, I also used to have this book, but I lent it to someone whilst I was traveling in New Zealand, and I never got it back. I don't think I'll ever get that book back. But you can still find this online for free. The author, Tom Montauk, actually is giving this book away as a free PDF, or you can buy a hard copy. And it's called Fringe Knowledge for Beginners. And it's a great introductory book. Although it is an introductory book, some of the concepts are very sort of advanced at the same time. So there's sort of advanced concepts boiled down to a introductory level. But they're very interesting, and Tom has a great way of writing. And his website itself, montauk.net, is a huge hub of information. So if you go to there, you can find his book and also all of his other material that he's written. But his book specifically really does break it down to very easy bite-sized chunks. And then if anything that he writes about resonates with you, you can take your journey further and go into all of the stuff he's written about on his website, which is very vast. And it took me a very long time to read it all. And even I haven't read all of the questions he's been asked on the frequently asked questions section, because there's just so many so many questions. But I've read every other article on there, and it's incredible stuff. So yeah, that would be a quick summary of some of my favorite books, the books that have hit me the most and really had a meaningful impact on my life. I hope some of what I've suggested can spark something within you if you haven't read these books already. And I hope you find it interesting. And I guess I will see you guys next time. I'm going to be doing a presentation about Lugol solution, which is an iodine solution, which is very useful and kind of unheard of. It should be mainstream, used by everyone in my opinion, but hey, that's the world we live in at the moment. So until next time, enjoy and goodbye.